Welcome to another episode of the Growth Focus podcast, where we bring together tech leaders from all across the globe to share their time, their insights, and their expertise with us so that we can grow together. My name is Gary Lafferty, your host and founder of the Growth Focus Partnerships, where we work with tech leaders and founders to help them build more stronger relationships, close better deals, and be seen and heard as the experts and authorities in their field. Now, on this episode, I'm extremely excited to have Patrick on. So before I introduce him, today we're going to be talking about growing a company, serial entrepreneurship, and what you have to do to stand out in today's competitive market. So without further ado, Patrick, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here today. Why don't we start off this episode with you introducing yourself and telling us who you are and what is it you do?
That's great. Well, Gary, thanks so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here and looking forward to this conversation. As you said, my name is Patrick Rooney, and I am currently the CEO of Mahalo Hub, which is a platform that makes it easy for organizations to invite, capture, and share a volume of authentic customer and employee video testimonials, thought leadership, reviews, that kind of thing.
Well, so we're going to delve a little bit more into that as well and about growing a business as we go on through this episode. But I want to dial it back a little bit and give the listeners and the viewers here a little bit of context as to who successfully exited two companies. Now you're building another one. So I suppose the best question is, right, what initially drew you to entrepreneurship, number one, and what keeps you coming back for more?
Yeah. The first question, what drew me to entrepreneurship? I'm not sure that anything really drew me to entrepreneurship other than, I came up through the ranks of marketing agencies and PR agencies. And this was in the late 90s, the early 2000s. And, in the technology market, it was froth. Right. There was just so much going on. And, I had a couple of experiences where I was working with clients and they had asked me, have you ever thought about kind of breaking out on your own? And I hadn't really until I got laid off from one of those jobs from an agency. And, coincidentally, I'm from California, and I kind of uprooted my life from San Francisco in 2001, moved to Chicago, took a job with an agency. I was here at the agency for a couple of years and then was laid off. It was after the moment of sheer panic, because at that time I was a mid-level agency guy. After the panic of, well, how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to support myself? How am I going to make an income? It occurred to me that I didn't have to go find a job. I had a skill set in an industry that I knew well, and I had people that were asking me for my services. And so I just kind of reached out and I was fortunate to also have some great referrals and references. And that kind of started my journey of entrepreneurship. It was by happenstance. And, and I did that as a consultant for a few years. I kept working on an idea with a colleague of mine around word of mouth marketing. And, in the 2000s, this concept of word of mouth really started to percolate in marketing circles. It's not new. Right. Word of mouth has been around for as long as anybody has been sharing things. Right. But this whole idea of, all right, well, as marketers, we know that word of mouth and the recommendation of a friend or family or trusted resource is far more powerful than anything we could do from a marketing or advertising perspective. How do we engineer that? How do we manufacture that, right? How do you bottle that? And this colleague and I kept working on this idea around, well, how is it that we can create a methodology and formula to engineer word of mouth that led to recommendations. And we kept working on that. And after, a good handful of years, in 2007, we morphed my fledgling consulting practice, which was a great lifestyle, and it was a great lifestyle business. But that then really became the first company into Zocalo Group. And that was kind of my first real true foray into entrepreneurship. Now,
So what brings you back now, Patrick? Because obviously there'll be people listening, there'll be people watching, and they're looking at potentially looking at their first exit, and they think, when will this ever end? This thing I've got to go through every single day. I can't wait to get to their next exit. But you've came back, and you not only came back once or twice, you come back for a third. So what keeps drawing you back into the industry? and into business?
I wish I could point to one specific thing and say, Gary, it's this one thing, but it's not really one thing. It's probably a combination of a personality default that I have, or fault rather that I have, that um, I just can't sit still. I enjoy seeing a problem and finding a solution to it in a practical way. I'm not the smartest guy in the bunch, right? I feel like I'm kind of an opportunistic entrepreneur where I see a problem or I see an opportunity and there's nothing in the market that is addressing that. And I'm just naive enough to think, hey, you know what? I could probably take a swing at that and find a solution to that. And so, that's what happened with my second company. It was in the era of social media, and, social media in marketing circles had really kind of blown up, which was great. But in 2012, 2013, social media was really in the arena of marketing, and it was starting to impact and encroach the rest of the organization. And I'll tell you, the first time that really dawned on me, I was stranded at an airport through endless delays. And I tweeted at American Airlines, hey, at AA, what's going on here? And it dawned on me that, gosh, this is a customer service issue as well, or a customer service channel. And so that really piqued my interest in terms of, gosh, this channel that we're all using for communication, and it's only growing in importance, in our lives. It's starting to touch other areas of the organization: customer service, recruiting. Recruiters live in LinkedIn, sales. But whereas marketing, and again, I came up through marketing, right? So as marketers, we use this every day, and we created best practices. We created measurement frameworks, right? We kind of knew how to use it in our jobs. However, salespeople and recruiters and customer service folks, they may not have those access to those best practices, right? Or the frameworks to use social media as a business channel. And so we created a solution for that. And so I tell that story really as a point to, I didn't set out to do this. I saw an opportunity. I saw, right, a gap in the market that interested me. And again, I was naive enough to think, hey, you know what, I can solve this. To answer your question, what keeps me coming back? So that was acquired a few years later. And I had the good fortune of taking some time off to be a dad at home, which was fantastic. It was a gift to me. That said, after a couple of years, I just started getting a little itchy. And if I think about the reason that I just couldn't either sit at home or, right, really just kind of let it go, I think there are a couple of things. One is there is an innate insecurity, I think, that I have, that I need to be a contributor, and I need to be doing something, right, and something meaningful. So I think that there is, something in my psychology where I need to feel like I'm contributing. At the same time, I started doing consulting, and I was working with some clients around a couple of projects. And in the process of those projects, I saw a gap in the workflow that I was using. And again, I thought, gosh, I don't want to start something new, but let me go look for a tool that will help me to do my consulting more efficiently. Looked in the market. I didn't find anything that checked all the boxes for me. And so I will tell you this, my wife has always been extraordinarily supportive, but she was like, listen, you can do whatever you want, but you're not starting another technology company. I saw this opportunity. I'm like, gosh, this is meeting me in a place that I have a real need, but there's nothing there that is fulfilling that. I can do this. And so, Gary, this is a long-winded answer to trying to come to what makes me keep coming back. But I think it's a little bit of a potpourri of insecurity, seeing gaps and wanting to fill them, and wanting to create practical solutions to real business problems.
Yeah. So I just listening to you there, Patrick, there, as you say, there's a whole convoluted bunch of reasons there, but a lot of it is down to you as a person, as an entrepreneurial person, just not even going out there looking for a problem. You just find the problem. You found a problem that needed to be solved, and you think, right, I can actually go and solve this. And I think this is one of the key things. It's what makes successful entrepreneurs, especially in tech, is actually solving a problem first, as opposed to, I have this great idea, let's build it and they will come.
Right.
It's knowing what the problem is, what do people actually need? And I love the terminology that you used there earlier. The problem met me where I was. where I was right then. That's where the problem met me. And that's the start of where we go and finish. So, on that basis, I think one of the biggest takeaways from that is say, yes, you can have the entrepreneurial spirit, but you can also be chasing down the wrong avenue if there isn't a problem there to be solved. And you came together with this spirit, entrepreneurial spirit, and that. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that. You've built businesses in both services and SaaS. What are the biggest differences in your mind in scaling each particular model?
There are huge differences, right? In a services business, it's all about the people and the ability to scale people, right? If you're going to create a services organization, you need to make sure that you're hiring the right people, right? People that are not only smart, right, and appropriate for their level, but also they can embody and embrace the services that you're trying to deliver. So I coming up through the marketing services arena, right? We want people who are obviously smart, but people who know their subject matter, people that are great with people, right? Great with with client management, great with creativity and creative problem solving, right? And so it's a people business. That translates a little bit to technology, but by its very nature, technology scales with the technology, not with the people, right? The people follow the technology. The technology doesn't follow the people. And so there are some parallels, though, between the types of people that you have in services and you have in technology. And I had a partner at Zocalo Group who I learned a tremendous amount from a customer support and client management perspective. And when she was hiring people, she would hire people almost exclusively who had been a server at a restaurant, right? Somebody that had been able to be in that environment, because the people skills that you need to have when you're taking somebody's order, when something goes wrong, right? I mean, those types of skills are so valuable as you get into a people-centric organization, right? Or environment. And so on the agency side, you want those people because the clients can be tricky, and the ability to handle any type of situation with prickly or sticky, tricky clients, that's hugely valuable. And that's really hard to teach, right? That comes from experience. That translates to a SaaS environment where you have customer success, right? People who are able to manage clients, right? And who are, right? It's a service mentality, right? And servant mentality. And so, the business models between the services and technology are very different. The human side of it, though, is pretty parallel, where you have to have people who are people. And you're going to have different types of people, right? Engineers may not be client facing. They may not have to have those soft skills or the empathy. But when I think of people and I'm hiring in the SaaS environment, I'm thinking, all right, are these people going to be good in front of our clients? And are they going to take care of our clients? Because one of the truisms that I've learned, and this was a hard lesson, but one of the truisms that I've learned in my career, whether that is services or technology, is that you're not going to be able to satisfy 100% of the people 100% of the time. Things go wrong, right? The difference between success and lack of success is how you handle that. And what we look for is people who are going to communicate. They're communicative, right? They're going to take ownership for a problem or an issue. They're going to address it and resolve it. They're going to take responsibility and be accountable. And one of the things that I've learned is that, customers will forgive you a lot, right? And they will give you a lot of leeway if you're transparent, if you communicate, if you let them know the status of where you're at and what's happening, not once, but keep them up to date, right? You get a lot of grace from customers, because I think that by and large, we're all human, right? And if you treat your customers or your clients as humans, right? And with that kind of empathy, then they're going to give you a lot of leeway.
Yeah, and that's especially important. And I'm glad you brought that up, Patrick, because there's this tendency within tech, especially, to go, well, being the cleverest person in the room. This is what we do. This is what we created. But when you look at the human nature, When people are disappointed, it's either because their expectations haven't been met or they feel out of control, completely out of control. They have no control. And like what you said there, but you will get a lot of grace. You will get a lot of people forgiving you if you are transparent enough. You can put your hand up and say, "Yep, this was down to us," or "It's not down to us, but this is what to expect." And you're laying the path out for them so they don't feel out of control. And if they don't feel they feel a little bit more in control. It's not that the customer's always right. It's just knowing how to work with them and what their expectations are. So that being said, let's talk about client expectations. From your perspective, how has client expectations evolved over the last few years, especially post-pandemic? And if they have changed, which we all know they have, how do businesses need to adopt?
I think that coming out of the pandemic, there's a couple of ways to approach that question. Coming out of the pandemic, I think that we all provide a little bit more room for humanity, right? We're working from home. A lot of us are working from home, being interrupted by dogs and children and delivery people. And so I think that there is going back to grace. I think that there's more grace and a little bit more flexibility around that, a little bit more flexibility around, again, a little bit more flexibility around how we get together. At the same time, I think people are more savvy, right? And especially in technology, I think that we're far enough into the technology era that people are pretty savvy, right? And there's not a whole lot that is new outside of AI, right? I mean, AI is AI, and there are more than enough conversations going on about AI. But I think that people have enough experience with technology that they know the questions to ask, right? And they know what they don't know, and they know what good looks like oftentimes. And so I think that expectations for vendors to show up a little bit more prepared, a little bit more polished and more transparent, right? And kind of just giving the facts without trying to sell all of the smoke and mirrors. I think the days of smoke and mirrors are severely limited because of that. And so I think because of that, then, the people, the organizations and the people that are going to be successful are focused on, all right, you know what? I don't want to sell to you. Let me help you solve your problem. Let me help you let me understand what your problem is, and let me help you solve it. And hey, if I can't solve it, great. I understand that. I may not be the right solution for you, but let's talk about, if it makes sense to continue the conversation.
Yeah,
I don't know. Are you
absolutely.
finding that, Gary? Do you find that?
Yeah, and I was just going to add to that, because we're noticing every single time where we see success today, especially in tech, and I'm going to put it under a bucket of humbleness to a degree, is that you can't, like you would say, smoke and mirrors. You can't walk into there and try and bamboozle them with tech, because buyers are far more savvy, like you said. They know what's right, they know what's wrong. But rather than just trying to push a product or service onto them, where we're seeing success with being the hybrid partner to the company, helping them solve their problem, helping them grow their company. So rather than just trying to push your products or services, you are now joining them and saying, right, what is the problem? What are the knock-on effects of that problem? How can we help you solve it? And that's where we're seeing success, and that's where we're seeing growth within the tech companies.
Yeah.
It is a mindset shift.
Yeah. It's funny. We used to call that consultative selling, right? And it's interesting. In my first company, I had a partner. I was the junior partner, and I had a partner who was an extraordinary salesperson. And we were going to pitch clients and even do outreach to clients and just the whole sales process. And I was uncomfortable with that and not very good at it, quite frankly. I think I was smart enough. I knew my subject matter, and I was good at that. And I was great at the delivery, but in the selling part, let's put selling in air quotes. And I shared that with him, and his response changed everything about how I approach sales and growth. And his point was, listen, I'm not going in and I'm not trying to sell anybody anything, right? What I'm trying to do, and I believe in what we're doing. And so what I'm trying to do is help them solve a problem and help them understand where their opportunities are. That, Gary, that changed my entire mindset from feeling like the schmaltzy, sales guy to a partner to help you figure out a path forward. And by the way, we may not be part of that equation, and that's fine. But you know what? Those relationships have a tendency to come back over time. And so, I got to tell you, that was career changing for me. And now I can tell you, I love nothing more than getting on calls with customers and prospects to talk about where they're at and how we can help. And sometimes it turns out, look, it's not us, but I'm happy to help you get to where you need to be.
Yeah, and that, I think that's it's such key now. It's not your agenda anymore. It's not a case of saying I have this. How can I convince you? It is, we know you want to move forward, Mr. Prospect or Mrs. Prospect. We know where you want to move there. We may not be part of that journey, like you said, but let's see if we can help you move towards there. And that is that hybrid partnership I was talking about, because you're not just coming from what you have, but you're coming in with a different angle to them and saying, yeah, look, let's see if we can help you, whether it's us or not. Maybe our contacts can, maybe our network can, maybe
Yeah.
somebody else. But let's see if we can help. But I love what you said there about relationships, because relationships are absolutely key, especially in tech. So I want to dive a little bit deeper, slight tangent though. You've leveraged marketing throughout your whole career and authority positioning. How important do you think and believe founder-led marketing is in today's landscape?
I think it's hugely important because there's an authenticity to it, and there is the core story there that I think is really powerful. And I think that for startups and for growth companies, the ability to tap into that origin is hugely powerful, right? And not only in terms of positioning, thought leadership, but also from an organizational perspective, right? I mean, I think a founder is the soul of a company at the beginning, just like, later on other people become the soul. But when you're just organizing, having that core touchstone, this is why we started and this is where we come from. And by the way, that's not to say that we're not going to pivot, we're not going to make adjustments, we're not going to evaluate and make changes. It's not to say that at all, but you're still at the core of an organization, right? You've got to have that. And I think that the founder kind of is not only your best storyteller, is not only, and oftentimes the founder has the core expertise, right? Because they saw the problem. Nobody knows the technology better than a founder, and nobody knows how to talk about the problem and the solution better than a founder. That's not to say that you don't bring in a great team for sales and customer success that can also tell the story. But having that, I don't know what to call it, but that soul and the core from the foundation, I think is so important.
No, yeah, if you look at any of the big brands today, and I think, we know a lot of tech founders, they tend to struggle with trying to stand out. This is why they're tech. They're good developers, good coders, good engineers, but standing out, being in the limelight, being in the spotlight isn't necessarily that comfortable for them. But when you look at other tech giants, you have the names at the front with the passion, like the soul, like you would say, or they bring in the passion that no CMO can do, no CRO can do. It is still that founder's passion that comes through. So this is the reason why I started it. This is where I really wanted to go. These are the people I really wanted to help. And this is the problem, like you said, this is the problem I saw that perhaps you have too. Yeah. And that is very hard to replicate further down the line with authenticity.
I think that's right. I think that's right. And again, that's not to say that, that an engineering founder or a founder who's an engineer or somebody that may not be out in the front. That's not to say that, that's not important, right? It's a founder doesn't necessarily have to be the face of the organization, right? But again, as you are growing an organization, right, and bringing people in, say you have an engineering founder, right, and it's engineering led. Again, you have that soul of the company, right? And you can bring in people. I've worked with people in my companies who were far more effervescent. They were far better on stage than I am. I'm not great on stage. And they were able to tell the story, but that story originated with me and my partners, right? Because we lived it. And by the way, from a recruiting perspective, it's so important, right? From a culture perspective, it's so important. And so I, and I apologize if I misspoke in terms of, the founder has to be out in front, not necessarily, but, having having the presence there, I think is really important.
No, I totally agree with you. You can always have somebody but as long as you're still there sharing the reasons why, and just so people understand who you are and what actually makes you who you are is a key thing. So that being said, you've seen businesses succeed and you've seen businesses struggle throughout your career. What are the most common mistakes you see founders make when trying to scale their business?
And by the way, I've been in both of those buckets, and I think there are a couple of things. One is focus. Right. And it's easy to get distracted by bright lights. Let's go over here. Let's go over here. And that spreads your resources thin. It spreads your team thin. And it's dilutive. And so, chasing bright lights. I also think growing faster than you can with intention. And what I mean by that is the ability to grow and bring people in that are going to help you with that growth. Right. And it's not a short way of saying that is, you just don't want to put butts in seats, right? You want to hire the right people at the right roles at the right time. And even if you are, even if you're growing like crazy, you need bodies and you need hiring somebody just to fill a seat is going to be far more costly down the road than it is to wait and find the right person. So I think, those two of those things. And then, we can get into the whole capital, the whole financial and capital conversation down the road. But I think that those two for founders, for startup founders, right? Focus and working with the right people at the right time. And then also, I think, the ability to partner with your customers, right? And bring them into almost a co-creation and finding those early customers who can be champions for you. Right. And in a number of ways, giving you feedback on your product or your service, giving you feedback on your marketing messages, being a case study that you can hold up time and again. I think those three things are pretty easy. I say easy. They're three things that are easy to kind of enumerate 1, 2, and 3 and address right off.
No, I agree with you. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that there is a tendency, again, we see in tech, especially with VC, although we're not going to be talking about on this episode, but with VCs, it's kind of like when they want you to run fast and expand fast. That's when we see tech companies, lean over their skis too much because they haven't got the right people at the right time, because it's almost been forced to throw people in and now you're just putting bums on seats, as you said, because that's what the VC company wants. So it's very important then for the founder to look back and go, is this the best person right now for this particular stage, and keeping that control where they can. VCs are fantastic. They give you loads of great ideas and point you in the right direction, but sometimes they will have their agenda that they need to fulfill as well, but might not necessarily align with yours. So if you had to start, Patrick, your entrepreneurial journey today, bit of a loaded question for you, I suppose. If you were to start your entrepreneurial journey today, what would you do differently to what you've already done?
So many things, Gary. So many things. I think I would, if I'm thinking of technology, my first technology company, I didn't have a CTO. I'm not a technology guy, right? We talked about this. I'm a marketing guy and I'm great with marketing. I'm great with ideas. I'm not a developer. I'm not a coder. And so we outsourced that. And I now am a firm believer in having a CTO from the beginning is extraordinarily important for any number of reasons, but it can help avoid a lot of the pitfalls and a lot of the speed bumps that we encountered as we were developing our core platform. And eventually we got there. But gosh, if I had a CTO early on, that would have been majestic.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, it is if you know you're not that person, to get someone to bring that idea, you've got your skills, as you said, the marketing side, the pushing side, the relationship side. But if you get the right person in to bring that fruition a lot quicker, a lot simpler, a lot faster, then you'll start hitting those benchmarks and those milestones a lot easier. So I've got a last question for you, Patrick. Thank you very much for all the time that you spent with us already today. But one last question for you. We've talked a lot today. We've talked, on various, from the beginning of a relationship in sales, the beginning of a business. If you wanted founders and the tech leaders who are listening to this episode and founders who are listening, if you want them to take away one key message from today's conversation, what would you say that was?
I would say focus. And I think that can apply in a lot of different ways, right? Focus on the market opportunity, focus on your team and having the right team, focus on product market fit, focus on your relationship with your early customers, especially early customers, right? And focus on establishing a give and take with those customers, right? And bring them in to be part of your extended team. Focus is the number one thing, I think, because it's so easy to get distracted. Everything that we have going on day to day, it's easy to get distracted with, hey, competitors are doing this over there. let's go, let's explore that. AI, got to get some AI. Well, to what end, right? And I'm not saying AI is not fantastic, but it may not be the right answer for everybody. And so focus, right? Focus, focus, focus. I think that is the number one thing that I would share.
Well, that might even be the title of this particular episode, Patrick, keeping focus for what it is. So listen, Patrick, thank you very much for sharing your time with us, saying your insights. If people want to get hold of you, potentially work for you, what's the best way of doing that?
They can reach us at, check our website out at www.mahalohub.com. Always find me on LinkedIn. It's LinkedIn/Patrick Rooney, or my email is patrick@mahalohub.com.
Well, I'll make sure those links are in the show notes so people can just do a one click and find out and get to you as soon as they can. So, Patrick, thank you very much. It's been an absolute honor having you on the show today. And thank you again for sharing your time and your insights. It's been fantastic.
Thanks so much, Gary. This has been fun.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Growth Focus podcast. I have no doubt that you've had a couple of those moments throughout today going, that's a really good, interesting point. I like that. Please make sure you like and you comment so that other people can see what you've learned, and perhaps that can help them too. But more importantly, please make sure you share these episodes so that leaders like Patrick's advice and insights can help more people grow their business. So until the next episode, make sure you keep striving, and more importantly, make sure you keep being profitable. See you later.